Assalamu alaikum, everyone. This is Samar Hasan, founder of Epiphany. And this time around, we're back with Smashing It by Epiphany. And this time around, we've got this amazing guest. You've already seen her image there, so I'll introduce her in just a second. Before I do that, though, I really want to highlight why Smashing It. What was the idea behind it? So obviously, we've heard of, breaking the glass ceiling. But essentially, now we're talking about smashing the glass ceiling, right? And what better way than to highlight Pakistani women who are doing wonders around the globe. So the series started back in 2017 with one session that we did with Asma Qureshi from Australia, again, a Pakistani-born, homegrown, organic product. And then we're back now this time around with Dr. Wardah Inam. So without much ado, I would love to invite her and bring her onto the virtual stage. There we go. Ta-da! Assalamu alaikum, Wardah. How are you?
Assalamualaikum, Samar. I'm good. How are you?
Doing very well. It is what? It's nearly 8 o'clock for you. So thank you for waking up super early and being
Yeah.
here with us so bright and shiny. So Dr. Wardah Inam, it's very interesting to have her with us. Why? Because she went to school in Pakistan. She grew up in Pakistan, born in Pakistan, and now 10 years later, she's found her calling in the US and has become, if I may say so, you've become a celebrity, okay, in the startup world at least. So I don't know how many times I've seen, mashallah, your article being reshared about you raising investment. So I think we're super proud of of you and your achievements. And today we'd like to do a deep dive into how you got where you are today. So go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit more.
Thank you, Samar, for the intro. Hi, my name is Wardah Inam. I'm the CEO of Overjet. At Overjet, we analyze dental clinical data at scale. So we help dental organizations analyze their clinical data to improve profitability as well as improve patient care. My background is that I was, as Samar said, born in Pakistan. Was there for most of my life. Did my undergrad from GIK, and after that came to the US for my master's and PhD. Did a postdoctoral fellowship in computer science and artificial intelligence lab at MIT, and then started working got recruited to work at a startup in Silicon Valley and Boston-based startup, and then moved to start Overjet.
Okay. All right. So you've kind of very quickly narrated your journey, but tell us about the person, Wardah. What do you think makes you you? Tell me your story.
My story is very similar. I grew up in Pakistan. My dad was in the Air Force. That meant we traveled a lot. So every year we moved to a new city, or every 2 years. And I think that got me, at least I started learning very quickly because you need to adapt very quickly. And then was always very interested in physics and math. When time came to choosing what I wanted to do, I got interested in engineering as a potential. So applied to a few colleges, GIK being one of them. One of my friends had told me his friend had gone. His brother had actually gone to GIK, and he thought if there was any college he wanted to go to in Pakistan, it would be GIK. So I ended up applying there. And then just falling in love with the engineering. Building something is start if nothing exists and you actually create something. It's a feeling that you. It's a very good feeling to have, and I think that's something that really stuck with me. And being creative about what you're creating and why you're creating, and being thoughtful of why you're creating it in the first place. So was in focused on robotics and energy, especially everybody in Pakistan, especially at that time, there was a lot of load shedding, etc. So I think everybody was interested in energy at that time. And for me, did good in college, and applied to MIT, and ended up here, and I started looking at what I really wanted to do with my life, what really I was interested in, and there were two major aspects. One was clean energy, and the other was healthcare. So did clean energy for a while, and then realized that healthcare is something that I'm very passionate about, primarily because I think I really want to have an impact in this world, and I feel that healthcare is one where we can actually have a very strong impact. And got into was doing biomedical sensing using wireless signals, so using Wi-Fi to detect breathing and heart rate, and then got recruited to work at QBio, a startup doing biomedical imaging. And then went to the dentist and got a treatments that I didn't expect. So that got me interested in dentistry and looking at why certain treatments were done and why others weren't. I actually got my X-rays from the dentist, gave it to a few more dentists to review, and realized that every dentist had its separate opinion on what was needed, and that the variation of care attracted me towards using technology to help solve issues in dentistry.
How easy or how difficult was it for you to get to Harvard Innovation Lab, to get incubated over there?
So my colleague is from Harvard. I did my master's and PhD and postdoc at MIT. So the ecosystem is very similar. So it wasn't. I won't say it was too difficult. Because of that. But it's a very good opportunity. So if you get an opportunity, like why we actually chose to be in iLab was the fact that you're surrounded by other entrepreneurs, and I think that's very needed when you're trying to do something. It always has its highs, but also the lows, and being surrounded by other people doing that helps, and also having some kind of mentorship as well as some kind of advisors present, especially in the early stage, for you to bounce back ideas. Probably nobody will know as much as you do because you probably get obsessed with your idea, but at least you have somebody that you can bounce back and forth your ideas with, which helps you iterate faster and have a sounding board.
What sort of advice would you have for other AI-based tech startups that are trying to launch their products? I've seen quite a lot of people are trying to, use AI for detecting diabetes. Then there's a startup that's working on breast cancer detection in Pakistan, that we know of, and there are others as well, right? So, what advice would you suggest for them, that when they're actually, thrashing out the idea, what should they be looking at? What sort of research should they be doing? Is there a source that they can go to get this kind of mentorship or advice in this area? I know there are 3-4 questions mixed with one, but anyway, go ahead.
I think so. I would say whatever startup it is, and AI, I would put AI in like hard tech startup. So, whatever startup it is, the most important thing is finding a customer. The technology is secondary. Technology comes secondary to solve that problem. So the first thing is finding the customer and defining what the problem you're solving. So you could be solving X number of problems. Even if you take, the example of breast cancer detection, you could be solving the problem of not having access to care, or are you solving the problem of triage? Or so there are many problems that you could be solving even with the solution. So it's more important to figure out what the problem is, and how important is the problem to solve. Is it a big problem that if you spend your whole life on, it'll be worth solving? And secondary is what is the best solution for it, and that's where the technologies come in. Could it be solved without the technology? If it can, go for it. Solve it with the easiest solution that is possible. But most, some problems cannot, and cancer detection is one of them. If you need technology, what is the best technology that needs to be built? So looking at what is the state of the art. You don't want to be repeating something that other people have done, because why not just get it from them and use that and get to your solution fastest. But if you can, if something doesn't exist and you're in the position to build it, then not being afraid of trying to build that with the best people around you who could build it. And I think that's where it comes in, is doing a little research on that particular aspect. Who would be the right people? Who would be your dream team? If you just put darts on the wall, who would be your dream team? Who would know how to solve that if you don't if you're not the AI expert per se. But once you have that together, it's worth pursuing it. In different ways. What you start off with is not probably what you'll end up with. So it's worth just starting and then just iterating and figuring out how do you really solve that problem.
So I'm just going to take a quick second, right? Because there are lots and lots of young entrepreneurs that we train who are part of the acceleration program that we run, etc. So if you guys are listening, right? So there are tons and tons of important nuggets over here. The customer discovery, the customer research is really important. Problem identification is key. If you're going to go ahead and just design a solution which nobody wants except you, well, then you're the only one, you're stuck with it, right? And finding that right team. So tell me more about the team, right? Because that is one particular area where a lot of startups particularly struggle a lot with, right? So go ahead and tell us some tips. What did you do?
So for the team, I think that's probably the biggest thing you'll do. What you can control, so that you can control your customers in a way. You can control the market trends in a way. What you can control is the people around you that will help you achieve what you want to achieve. And I think spending time, even before you do a startup, if you're spending time around people who want to do something, I think that will be probably the best thing that you can do. So being your friends who are interested in doing something, that could be a startup, that could be something else, but just this act of I'm not going to just do a traditional job. If that exists in people, then it might be some people that you can just bounce ideas with. As you kind of pointed out in the beginning, that organic aspect of it, is actually more important here, where it cannot be that forced. Somebody you just meet off the internet might not work. You might want to have a connection with them before, because it is difficult. You will go through the highs and the lows. So it's good to know the person before and how they complement you. I think some of the mistakes that people can make, and I've been in the same boat, is like looking at people exactly like you, so having the same skills as you, where of course when you're in school, your friends are usually have the same skills as you, they're doing the same courses as you. So I think that's probably number one, where it's people who are more complementary to you, especially so that you can actually build an organization which doesn't just rely on those skills. There are other skills that are there as well. From me personally, I actually I have two co-founders, and one of them is a dentist, and the other is a technologist. He was the technologist was with me at my previous startup, so that's how I met him. He was my colleague. He was also from MIT, but he had graduated in 2001, so a lot more experience, and I think that's pretty good as well. Having different set of experiences, and we had discussed about startups a lot before, and when I decided to do this, he was the first person I called and I said, hey, I'm trying to do this. Would you join? He had left the startup and had joined Amazon. So he left Amazon and joined the startup. And the other was a person I knew because of he had gone to MIT as an undergrad and then had done his dental degree from Harvard. So there was some common connection there, and we started looking at starting solving the problem. So we didn't have a solution in mind when we started. We started looking at how do you solve the problem of variation of care or diagnosis that exists in dentistry, and starting with people around who have different views than you do.
I think that's really, really, again, very, very important, right? Because so let me ask you another question, actually. So have you lost any one of your core team members till now?
No, so I think we've been very lucky in that sense, that we have not lost anyone.
And I think that again kind of goes back to the deliberation that you have to do before you pick the right team members, right? Because as a startup, you're bound to struggle, plus the highs and the lows and the teething problems and the late nights that you have to put in, all of that, right?
But what I will say is, if you want to do something, don't worry about if you lose your co-founders or whoever you got on board. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter in terms of, of course you have to make sure you get somebody or you could do it without them. But more likely the chance of success increase if you have somebody with you. But once you have someone, say, life situations occur, different things happen in, their motivation might drop. But that does not mean that, there's something wrong with the idea. That does not mean there's something fundamentally, this should not be explored. And if you're still interested, and if, say, especially if you are the CEO, the responsibility is on your shoulders to make it happen. And that means, you'll get better people. There's when you start to when, say you've raised money, etc. The quality of hires you can have and people who want to join because now the idea is more thought through. It's not simply like, I have an idea, would you join me? And you have more people on board as well. It's much easier to attract talent as well. So I would say if you really want something to happen and want to make it happen, just go for it. People, as you said, the highs and lows are also, your co-founder might leave, but that does not mean that the idea isn't good enough or you should stop doing what you're doing.
Yeah, I think you have to still continue going and pursuing your dreams. So tell me something. So we've got a question from Tayyaba because we were just speaking about it a while back. How do you find customers? What are some strategies that you can recommend?
So I think first is, before, the customers, you want to say, okay, what really, like, have some kind of direction of, say, whether, for us, it was dentistry, right? So we were like, okay, we want to solve X problem in dentistry. So I'll start with that as an example, but, it depends on what the problem area that you at least have a direction. So it cannot be, I want to build an app for restaurants and dentists, and I want to build for physicians as well. Choose one thing. Once you have that thing that you really want to build on, now the question is, who has the problem? So for our case, it was, okay, it could be patients, right? Patients don't get the right care. Could we target the patients? The second could be, it could be the dentists. So who are the stakeholders there, right? Or it could be the insurance companies. So we actually looked at all of them. So we started actually with patients. We started looking at patients first, and we said, okay, I think the biggest problem is for patients. What can we build for patients? But what we realized was patients themselves were not informed enough about dentistry to actually make a informed decision. So the fact, if I ask you, Samar, how many teeth do you have? You might not remember how many wisdom teeth have been removed, or if I ask you how many fillings you've had. So there's a lack of the patient themselves are less informed, and especially the ecosystem in the US of how dentistry gets delivered, etc. We started off with that, and then started looking at who else could actually be facing this problem. And we realized it was the insurance companies as well as larger group practices where you have multiple dentists providing it. And that is customer discovery, where you're actually talking to them. So you're talking to a patient, or just patients are easy because you can just talk to a friend and say, hey, if you had this, would you use it? And don't go for, they will say yes, of course, right? Like, because they're your friend, but, reading between the lines and seeing how they that excited, do they think this is the best thing in the world? Same with, I would say, for us, it was dentists. So we started talking to dentists and saying, what are your problems? So and seeing for yourself, could what you're building or what you want to build, could that solve that problem as well? Or do you have a solution for the problem that they're facing, and how big is that problem, right? Well, first it's like, okay, if the big problem is big enough for them, so it's something that then they're more likely to pay for it. But it'll be, it's worth asking them as well. If if this could be fixed with whatever solution there is, would you pay for it? And you might get a lot of no's. So yeah, and then not being discouraged by it. They might say, "Oh, it doesn't work." In this field, this wouldn't work, etc. Because I think it's not that easy for everybody to see what you're seeing. And people, change is not that easy for people to imagine as well. So from your point is basically looking at, do I think fundamentally what their problem is and what I'm trying to build, can it solve that problem? And asking the questions, and leaving them open-ended. Not saying, exactly, this or that. Keeping them open-ended, letting them talk, and understanding where how they feel, and then building something which barely works, but building something and saying, okay, here it is. You thought it was a big problem. Would you pay for it? And if the answer is yes, you have something. If the answer is no, like try again, whether it's the solution that needs to be changed, or is it not the right customer. So even for us, you would think all dentists are alike, but that's not the case. Dentists are so different in first how they are structured, whether some are in larger groups, some are solo, and personalities are different. People's how they view
Appetite for
themselves.
technology. Appetite for
Absolutely.
technology is different as well,
Yeah,
right?
so that's why talking to a lot of people is very important, rather than talking to one or two people you might know. So just not making any conclusion until you've not talked to at least, I would say, 10 people, the different people, and seen. If it doesn't work, it's good to get that answer. It's good to hear the no before, so that you don't spend a year building something that wasn't needed.
So I wish that, at the time when you were doing your customer discovery and customer research and talking to your customers, I knew you, because my sister has really bad teeth, right? So she's had like 14 fillings and root canals and I think now it's 6 or 7 root canals, crowns, etc., right? So she really has weak teeth, but she could have been an excellent source of information for you and how she's gone through the journey. On that note, we've got another question, right, which is kind of linked. He's asking, are dentists willing to use the AI solution? And at present, you mentioned, or maybe before when we were chatting, you mentioned that this is now being implemented across a lot of dental clinics in the US. So,
Yeah.
what are the figures like? And what is your how many, let's say, out of 100, how many dentists are actually willing to use the AI solution?
So I think for us, we're not mass like talking to people. It usually is these are dental groups. And most for so I'll say this. The adoption of artificial intelligence technologies in dentistry has been much faster. Previously, I was working in, as I mentioned, biomedical imaging. So that's MRI imaging for radiologists. It's even harder for radiologists to accept AI than it is for dentists. And why? I think dentists will understand this very clearly, but it's actually very nuanced, the differences. But the fact is, a radiologist, their core job is to read X-rays. And if a technology can do that, it feels like a replacement of themselves. A dentist, their core job is not to read X-rays. Their core job, they see themselves more of a surgeon than they see as a radiologist. So the fact that a technology can help them read X-rays, they don't feel threatened by it at all. The way they see it, as especially in dentistry, at least here, you have your dentist and you have your hygienists. So the hygienists are the ones who are doing your cleanings, taking your X-rays, and then when the dentist comes, they're pointing to the dentist. X, Y, and Z was present in this image. So dentists see this more as a better hygienist than they see it as a better dentist. And I think that has been a biggest learning for us. And I think we weren't expecting this when we actually got into it, but more that we talk to dentists, we're like, they weren't saying, "Oh, I missed this." They said, "Oh, yeah, my hygienist usually misses this," which should be their job. But the way they look at it is, my hygienist points stuff out to me, and this can point stuff out to me better than my hygienist can. So I think for us, adoption has been much easier because of this. We work with larger groups. So say, the last group that we got on board is about 38 practices. We also have practices which have, 300, 400 practices as well, which means thousands of providers. So right now we're not focused on solo dentists. We're focused on group practices. And that's again, a B2B sale. Even I would say even an enterprise sale when it gets to those thousands of providers. And it's there's a pipeline, right? So you reach out to people. Some are through warm leads or cold messaging, and then there's the way it closes for different. If it's a warm lead, of course it'll close. More likely to close. If it's a cold message, there might be a less chance of closing, but it might be it might take even longer sometimes. So I think knowing your cycle of close doesn't mean nobody wants to buy it, etc. If it's say $1 million deal, it's going to take time. It's not going to be 2 seconds for that to happen. If it's $10 deal, if nobody's clicking right there and then you don't probably have a product. If it takes a year for it to close, it probably will not work. So for us, the deals are bigger, and we're we cultivate the deal. It's making sure that they're bought in. It works for them. It works for the people in the organization, and that can take some time. For us, it has been as quickly as like, I love it, I want it today, for the first time, to like, okay, let's have another meeting, and gone up to like 4 months to close that deal, depending on the size of it, depending on the person, etc. So there's a pipeline.
So look, you used a very, very interesting word, right, which we often use for investors, cultivation. So we've got a question as well. Please comment on finding sources for funds at initial stages of startups. So that, and then of course, in your journey for Overjet, how long since you started to raising the $7.85 million, right? So tell us about both.
So I think I'll start with the journey, and I think that way I can direct there as well. So I think for us, we were lucky that we actually got our first check very, very quickly. So we incorporated in August 2018. I think our first check came in September, and the first check was from a dentist. He was actually a Pakistani dentist, who very accomplished in the Boston area. He used to be a professor at Harvard before, and it was a person I talked to who said, "Hey, you should talk to this dentist." While I was pitching him, he was sold, and he said, he would like to invest. So it actually happened pretty fast for us. So we at least had some money from the beginning, but it wasn't large money in that sense. It was enough to say, okay, there might be something here. If people are, if a dentist thinks, that they're going to put in their hard-earned money,
that probably gave you the impetus to kind of keep pursuing with the idea, right? That probably was really important money at the initial stage.
I think so. I think, of course, people, it could have been money, it could have been anything else, but the actual like customer who was going to use it is as excited about it as you. Before that, so I would say the first few dentists I talked to were not, they were like, this wouldn't work, I know what I'm doing, and other aspects like that. Dentistry is different. That's what I heard, and then I met this dentist, and he was like, okay, this is the future. So I think that's where I got the first money from, and then we started looking for institutional money. So we our next big one was from an MIT affiliated fund. It's called E14 Fund. Again, you need to build it's, I think, with raising funding, and that's where I'll get to this phase as well. The networking is a big thing. You might come from a family that's well connected, and you might have all the connections to begin with, but most people are not in that category, and that means, and most people, especially if you're going from like college to starting a startup, you're not around people who are just having money and giving it as well, and you're not thinking of people as, oh, do they have money, or should I be interacting with them? So it's a very different aspect of it, where you start then I think looking at whether it's angel funding is basically where it's individuals giving money. They're not part of a company in a way, which might be a VC fund. It's very different. The money is very different. An angel might be really interested in what you're doing and invest. It's good to get angel money in the beginning, because VCs, you might not want that structure in the beginning, because you might be pivoting, you might be seeing what you really want to do. So I think the first thing is like trying to get some money in, and that is might be angel money. So that could be friends and family, if it could be your own savings. So I did put some of my own money in as well, and then finding people who are willing to support the idea, and then the transition comes. That should be enough for you to build something, because for a VC, they have to they're more they're seeing so many options, right? So they're constantly getting pitched. You might be an amazing pitcher, and they might want to work with you, but most likely, and most people, you will have to show them something, and that means you might have a product built with a customer. It might be that you have some kind of everybody saying that they will buy it, but you don't have a product built. But there is something saying, okay, I've proven something, I've de-risked it for you, but there's something here. But till getting to that point, it'll be very hard for you to raise money. So I think I would say going towards trying to just raise money when you don't have anything is not a good idea. So you'll be spending your time trying to raise money, and everybody will just say no to you. So it's better off to, take a little money in, or just start. I think the advantage if you're in Pakistan is you can be at your parents' place. You don't have to be paying for rent even, and build something out a little. And kind of understand who the customers are before you start raising money, or before you even start thinking about money. So I think that would be at least my take on it, where money, if the more you do this thing you do, the easier it is to get the money, and focusing on the problem and solution before you start raising the money, and de-risking it slightly so that you can raise money easily.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Look, so I've put up another question as well from Tayyaba. She's saying, how do you present yourself as a startup? So maybe what I'd like you to do again, what were you presenting earlier, and what kind of lessons have you learned where you started pitching even better and better, right? So tell us what techniques you've kind of adopted over the years.
So I think with time you'll get the clarity, right? So nobody, if you just started off, you won't have the clarity of like what is the best way to pitch. I think once you get the slide deck together, I think you're ready to pitch. But what I started doing in the beginning, it was a slide deck. But what I realized was, it's not about the facts. It does, people don't make decisions just on facts. They make decisions on what they think and emotions and other aspects. So it's not about bringing in facts first at all. It's about making them understand the problem and solution. If they understand the problem, then they're more likely to understand the solution as well. So if you can make them understand the problem and saying that this problem exists and it's big enough for you to be solving, I think that's number one. And I think just focusing on that, and that doesn't have to be through a slide deck. The best is if you can just like talk to someone and explain to them that this problem is real, and don't go into solutioning unless they believe in the problem. If they don't believe in the problem, you could have the best solution in the world with all the 99% accuracy, whatever the numbers you want to put in, you would it wouldn't work. So I think from where I started to where I'm right now, I would say I've like removed more facts from my presentation and made it more of a story of why this needs to exist, why this is the right way to go about it, and in terms of the approach rather than the numbers, and how do people perceive it. So if they intuitively get it, I think you're more likely for them to get interested in it than if it's the numbers make sense.
Absolutely. So I think the storytelling, I was waiting for you to say that. And I'm so glad you said it, because I think that's really, really important. People forget. And sometimes in pitching, they spend so much time just describing the problem that actually the solution, there's not enough time left for the solution, right? And everybody has to remember the investor has very limited time. So you have to grab his attention. And usually that happens with the story, because they need to know that you're passionate about it. Come hail, come storm, you're going to stick through with that idea and pursue it, right? So I think that's really interesting. Tell us something. So tell us about some failure, right? So tell me anything, that didn't go right or didn't go the way you wanted to, and how did you respond to it? What happened?
So I think, so in this startup or in general?
In general, it can be in general. It can be just, a part of your life story. So what has happened that was kind of like your biggest failure in a way? And what did you do?
Yeah, I think, so failure usually is happening a lot, right? So if you're trying to do something, it's probably failure till it works, right? So especially I was doing a PhD. A PhD is all about failure till your solution, especially in technology. You're basically creating something that has never existed before, and you're trying to make something exist which people might not think is possible to exist, or you're trying to prove a point. So I think with that, it literally is every day there's a failure of experiment. You try something, it doesn't work, you're trying it again. Even in the startup as well, where you might pitch, it might not work. When you're fundraising, it's probably 90% failure, right? There's only 10. You need one person to say yes, and then you're good. So I would say, I think thinking of it as failure, you know, I think it's too much weight putting on what you've tried to do. You've put yourself out there, and the other person does not think that or they don't understand it, or they don't think it's a good idea. I would say it does seem like a failure, but it's just it's. I think there was somebody. While I was at MIT, this in the we had a trust our entrepreneurship center, and the person who was leading it, he said it was a next play. So what that means is, like, if you're in a game, you say you're playing basketball or whatever game you're playing, it's always about the next play. So yes, you threw the ball, it didn't go the right way. You can't just say, okay, that was a failure, right? Like, you basically say, okay, my next ball, where do I throw it now, knowing what happened. So I think like, if anybody is thinking of entrepreneurship, I would say it's like 90% failure is going to happen, and failure is not the exception, it's actually the norm. And it's that 1 or 2 or like 10%. If 10, you're lucky if it's the 10% success. But even if you get 1%, that's what you're aiming for. And if you're trying to do something again which hasn't existed before, it's going to be failure after failure. So I think that would be something I would say, just getting used to it, and it doesn't make you bad. And what we see, say, on TV, or when we see the success, there's a billion failures before it.
Absolutely.
And the success is just an attempt that worked. So I would think of it as an attempt. You do an attempt, it works or doesn't work, and then you don't make another attempt and moving from the first attempt to another attempt. Of course, looking at it of why it didn't work, so you can reassess. So not just saying, okay, yeah, that went well, but it didn't go well. Okay, how do I change the next time? And especially when it comes to funding, nobody I know, it could be the best entrepreneur in the world, everybody has had people say no to them. Like, there's no way everybody says yes. If everybody says yes, there's something wrong. Like that, I would say that's where the exception will occur. But if it's something new, most people will say no.
हाँ, तो ऑलमोस्ट अच्छा, उर्दू में किसी ने हमें रिमाइंड कराया कि हम उर्दू में नहीं कर रहे दिस कॉन्वर्सेशन, राइट? तो उर्दू इंग्लिश मिक्स कर लेते हैं, बट यूर एब्सोल्युटली राइट. इन अ वे अगर आप उसको देखो तो इट्स लाइक अ स्टेपिंग स्टेप, इट्स लाइक अ स्टेपिंग स्टोन, राइट? सो ईच टाइम यूर फेलिंग, एक्चुअली इट्स लाइक टेलिंग यू, एक लेसन निकल के आ रहा है उसके अंदर से कि अच्छा ये नहीं करना, अब कुछ और करना है. So you're not wasting your time, and the faster that journey is, the better it is, because then you're going to reach that final product or service that people do want, और उसको फिर आपने evolve करना है, right? Because itni sari competition is in the market. There may be other people who are actually working on the same lines as you. Acha, tell us one more thing, so while we're on the fundraising wala aspect, etc. What was that X factor? वो कैसी ऐसी, वो कौन सी ऐसी बात थी Overjet के अंदर, जिसकी वजह से you were able to raise, this big sum of money, $7.85 million?
So I think,
or maybe it was more than one. Maybe it was more than one X factor, right?
No, I think for us, I think, and every team has probably at least one thing, or and highlighting that is the most important. Himalaya, I think it was the team. We had a very, very solid team, and that's something, as I pointed out first, that you have control over building. So हमने जो team build की थी, whether with technology as well as industry experts. So it wasn't just the fact that हम लोग technologists MIT से आ गए थे, तो हमें we know what's happening. What we did was we had we have the best technologists, as well as we have people who are from the industry, जिन्होंने industry को अंदर से देखा हुआ है, and they know how and what needs to happen as well. So I think that was the biggest aspect, and from then we've actually even grown the team much further, and added exceptional people to it. Abhi humne last major hire kiya tha, that was our chief dental officer. He is the past president of the American Dental Association, which is the largest association of dentistry in the US. So one of the most respected dentists. So that means the next time we go, we'll even have a much to fundraise. We'll even have a much stronger team than what we had in the beginning. So I would say the team was number one, and that led to everything else. That led to the traction that we received. Nobody had seen insurance companies adopting a technology this fast, and I would say a lot had to do with the technology, but a lot had to do with the team as well, who knew how to sell to insurance companies. So I would say the team, a startup is nothing more than the team, and there's the team which will determine what product gets built and how you solve the problem and the money you end up raising as well.
Okay, आपके junior हैं अरसलान, ठीक है? वो कहते हैं कि he is a GIK alumni himself, quite junior to you, batch 2020, graduated a couple of years after you. He heard your success story. He's asking, आपने खुद अपने AI algorithms खुद बनाए हैं और invest किया है R&D के अंदर, या आपने कुछ adopt किया है some other technology जो exist करती है for your end product?
So, we built of course we're using like open source libraries, etc. So, any software company would be using. It'll be, I would say it won't be right to like actually build from scratch everything. So if there is, whether it's PyTorch, TensorFlow, or other libraries or frameworks that exist, so we're using those. But of course, are the algorithms that really work. And now, for us, it's not that they just have to work; they have to work better than a dentist output would be. We've had to build the algorithms ourselves and make sure that the results are good. And it's not, I think, especially when it comes to AI, it's not just about the algorithms, right? So algorithms is one piece of it. It's also about the data. How do you collect the data? How do you clean up the data? How do you annotate the data? What's the quality of the data? How do you get a whole spectrum of data? So I think there's a whole data strategy which some people might ignore. I would say that's at least, if not at least 20-30% of the whole puzzle, and then you have your algorithms, it's your testing strategy, and then getting it to a point that you have it as a final product. So all the productization around it. So for us, we've had to, because again, we're building something that hasn't existed. That means we have to build and do our R&D ourselves.
So एक और question आया है technology related ही, auto ML क्या replace कर देगा ML engineers को? अच्छा, वर्दा, once again just quickly remind करा रही हूँ कि ज़्यादा उर्दू if possible.
ठीक है. So I think that, of course, I think engineering questions will be harder just because the terminology is being used are in English. I don't think so. At least auto ML can focus on some particular aspects, but when you're talking about a particular application, at least for now, it's not there yet. When you say dentistry has very different problems than you would have if you're looking at self-driving cars. So for us, at least, I would say in the next 5 years, auto ML isn't replacing ML engineers, but it's always getting better and better. If you're talking about supervised learning, which is data annotate karte ho, you put it into the algorithms and try to get outputs, I would say that is more likely to, at least having more cookie cutter approaches will happen. But there's so many more approaches, like where we're looking at as well, and other companies as well, which is your semi-supervised learning and then unsupervised learning. So the technology will always keep on adapting and requiring technologists to build that out as well.
अच्छा, जहांज़ेब पूछ रहे हैं कि जो आप AI वाला काम कर रही हैं, आपको क्या लगता है कि do you think ये ज़्यादा advanced है पाकिस्तान जैसे country के लिए? So maybe and tell us also कि do you plan किसी वक्त कि आप अपनी solution को पाकिस्तान लेके आओगी?
So abhi, I don't, at least in the future, yes. Abhi to, we're focused, again, I think it's very important to focus on a market, every market, as I said, it's not about the solution, it's about the problem that you're trying to solve. The market is different in Pakistan. And I think the way it is different is yahan zyada focus at prevention pe. That means you go to the dentist regularly, you get checkups regularly, and data collect karte rehte ho regularly. In Pakistan, it's more problem focused. Aapko dard hota hai, aap dentist ke paas jaate ho, aur dentist ne wo problem solve karni hoti hai. So I think there is a difference in the two problems that, or at least the landscape. So we'll have to evolve that solution. So I think it'll take a few years if we get to Pakistan problem. Lekin I think Pakistan, where there's a lot of opportunity, which is the fact that I don't know if you guys know this, but there are hardly any oral radiologists there. Oral radiologists are basically a specialty in dentistry which just looks at radiographs. Even in the US, यहाँ से 200 oral radiologists हैं. In Pakistan, there are Pakistanis who are oral radiologists, but I haven't met a oral radiologist who is in Pakistan. And because of that, I think there is an extreme potential for artificial intelligence technologies to be providing outputs on radiographs, especially when it comes to 3D radiographs, and that is something I think will be very needed in Pakistan and other developing countries as well, so, where you have lack of oral radiologists. So I think definitely as हमारी products expand करते हैं, we will be building products which are focused on Pakistan and other developing world countries, and towards more access of care, ताकि people get low cost access to dental care, which is a need that we see globally.
Okay. So just to put it out there, we are left with nearly 15 minutes रह गए हैं हमारे session के अंदर. So please go ahead, अपने questions जरूर पूछें. Otherwise, forever hold your silence. No, I'm just kidding around. बाद में भी आप पूछ सकते हैं. ये एक बहुत interesting question आया था, ठीक है? Little bit loaded as well. मोहम्मद हसनैन पूछ रहे हैं कि आपको क्या लगता है future क्या है AI का, given the fact that AI अभी तक identify नहीं कर पा रहा कि किधर next wave COVID-19 की होगी. AI totally failed in that. तो आपको क्या लगता है कि what's the future of AI given this particular scenario?
So I think AI is a loaded word, right? AI के अंदर what has worked and what hasn't worked. आजकल जो सारा interest है, and why AI is such a buzzword right now is actually because of this technology called deep learning. So it's not AI in general is something that always works and it's what's happening. What has happened is deep learning, it's basically neural networks which are deeper, got results which we had never seen before. And that is very specialized. It's not a general artificial intelligence in that sense. And where it really works are a few areas, and images being one. So आपके images, so computer vision, so taking information out of images, deep learning has really done really well there compared to humans. Then you have your language processing, वहाँ भी AI, especially deep learning. So I would say it's not, every problem cannot be solved by artificial intelligence. There are a set of problems which, a lot of it has to do with pattern recognition. If there is a problem जहाँ pattern recognition हो रही है, deep learning would really solve it. Deep learning and in deep learning, it's supervised learning. So there's, I would say AI is the big buzzword. Usme, you come to deep learning, usme you come to, there are different types of deep learning. And if you come to supervised learning, that's where the real, advancement has happened because of course, the algorithms, but also the hardware. So it's just gotten cheaper to run, compute or just run so many computational nodes. And that's why we've seen what we've seen. But I won't say AI is a solution for everything, and it shouldn't be applied. There might be simpler solutions, if-else statements if they work. Just put if-else statements. You don't have to. Everything shouldn't be a learning algorithm, but especially when it comes to pattern recognition, or a repetitive task, deep learning artificial intelligence has really worked.
अच्छा, एक और सवाल इनका आया हुआ है, क्या आपने डेवलपमेंट अप्रोच यूज की थी हार्डवेयर साइड पे, कस्टमर हार्डवेयर और सॉफ्टवेयर साइड पे, कौन सी लैंग्वेज यूज की थी? सो आई एम नॉट श्योर इफ ये आपका सीक्रेट सॉस है या नहीं है.
नहीं, so हमने हार्डवेयर को कुछ नहीं टच किया. हम इट्स अ सॉफ्टवेयर कंपनी कंप्लीटली, और हम लोग बेसिकली पाइथन यूज करते हैं. वी यूज पाइटॉर्च लाइब्रेरीज.
ओके. और दूसरा वो पूछ रहे हैं, जैदान ही पूछ रहे हैं सेकंड क्वेश्चन भी, आप उनको गाइड कर सकती हैं अबाउट एआई बीइंग यूज्ड इन 3D प्रिंटिंग, any future plan or existing startup from Pakistan? So that's a very specific question.
Yeah, no, I don't think I have knowledge about 3D printing. I think there are a few companies here, Carbon 3D, etc. But I don't know usme AI kitni use ho rahi hai. I think 3D printing, a lot of the focus right now is on materials, and we've pehle plastics se ab metals aa rahe hain, and focused on that. There might be some AI initiatives happening as well, but I think right now a lot has to do with materials which allow you to develop different products which are more useful rather than a brittle plastic product.
Okay, so I'm going to rephrase the question because बहुत ही direct question पूछ लिया सोहेल ने कि आपका monthly burn rate क्या है और आप कैसे उसको profitable देख सोचती हो कि हो जाएगा. लेकिन maybe let's rephrase the question and ask you कि अभी how far away are you from break even and what do you see? You know, in a way, I kind of want to ask you कि क्या future है Overjet का?
So I think any VC backed startup is burning money more than they're making, and that's why you're raising money as well. So it's when people see big numbers being raised, that means you're burning a lot of money. And usually people raise money for a year and a half. That means you can just back calculate what the burn might be. And I think so that's yeah. And what you're trying to do is you're raising for the next milestone. So you have a next milestone in mind, and you say, okay, if we hit the next milestone, it might be revenue, it might be something big that's happening. Mostly at this stage, it becomes revenue as well. That increases your valuation. So there's basically a mental math you're doing, or you can do it on an Excel sheet as well. आप check कर रहे होते हो, okay, मुझे क्या achieve करना पड़ेगा in the next one and a half year for my valuation to increase by X times, and you have that number in mind, and you're looking at trying to get to that. For us, again, this is a very it might be a US thing, but it's a very common thing of raising for one and a half year, and trying to achieve X number of things. So I think that's how I would answer the question. And most VC startups are going for growth. So profitability comes, can you become profitable? I think that's a second question where it's like, okay, if without growing that fast, could you actually become profitable? And I think that's very important. But the question of whether you need to be profitable, I think with VC-backed startups, that question is it's better to be growing than just being profitable. Of course, you have to have revenue. So startups which are just burning and don't have revenue, I think those will fail, especially in an ecosystem or an environment such as COVID. But you need to have your fine line between what your valuation can be, what are you burning right now, and when is the next milestone that's going to be hit.
अच्छा, दो सवाल आए थे, ठीक है. सिलिकॉन वैली का किसी और ने भी पूछा था कि आपका कैसा एक्सपीरियंस है, एंड देन हसन इज आल्सो आस्किंग, ही इज सेइंग कि सिलिकॉन वैली में कितना फोकस आपने देखा है इन बायोटेक, body sensing integration with artificial intelligence to bring medical diagnosis in cell phones. And I'm not really sure because you took your startup to Silicon Valley as well.
No, I think it's probably because of my previous startup. It was Silicon Valley based startup. So I was working at a startup. I was leading product at the startup. So I think the question is pretty focused on so I would say Silicon Valley itself is, this is I think Boston ecosystem talking about Silicon Valley ecosystem, but I think it's less hard tech focused. It's more consumers, startups. So I would say, especially when you talk about real hard tech, where, for example, you're talking about body sensing integration, there will not be that many companies. But that does not mean there's no interest. If you have such a startup and you can build something which is harder than simpler solutions to build, there's definitely money there that can fund you. So I think so I would say Boston might be even a better ecosystem when it comes to biotech, especially because we have a lot of pharma, etc. companies here compared to Silicon Valley. But I would say it's not about it's better if there are less people working on something than a lot of people working on the same solution. It's easier to raise money. It's easier to build that out as well.
That's great insight again. So because a lot of people Pakistan के अंदर it's always about Silicon Valley. But ये बहुत interesting आपका point है कि okay अगर आप biotech में जा रहे हो, so then look eastward, right, rather than going Silicon Valley. अच्छा, अब आपसे एक और सवाल पूछना चाह रहे थे. मोइन पूछ रहे हैं, you developed autonomous microgrids during your PhD. आपने क्यों decide किया to move away from that?
So I think we were discussing this before the call, Samar. I think for me, I wanted to get into healthcare. and I made a conscious decision of actually moving towards healthcare. And after my PhD, I actually did a postdoctoral fellowship at MIT's Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Lab, looking at using wireless signals. So, आपका जो Wi-Fi है, using that to detect your heart rate, breathing. We were working with pharma companies. We were working with um, nursing homes, etc., to use that technology. So it was a conscious decision made from my part, where I felt that I could have a lot of impact if I was working in healthcare. And so I made that shift after my PhD.
Which kind of brings us very nicely into segueing, into कि क्या future है, आपका जो next milestone है Overjet का, आप क्या देखती हो? ठीक है, पहले ये बता दो, and then I'll ask you my kind of like the final question.
So I think for us, one big milestone is getting FDA approval, which is we can provide a lot of solutions without that. So हमारा जो insurance का arm है, we can actually do it without FDA approval. So there's a lot of things we can provide without it. But our biggest next big milestone is getting FDA approval.
Okay, and then sorry, let me bring myself back on screen. Yeah, okay. So and then the final question for you is going to be, you said आपने काफी दफा बात की है कि आप impact create करना चाह रही थी, इस वजह से आप healthcare के अंदर enter आप आई हो. तो अब आप थोड़ा सा ये मुझे बताओ, as a final note, कि what is going to be a good life led by Wardah, right? What is the legacy that you're trying to leave behind?
So at least for me, I'm trying to leave behind in terms of, after I'm gone. I think at least during my life, every day I spend, I want to be working on problems that I think matter in the world. If I'm, working on, everybody works in the end. If you're working on something, I think it's worth spending time working on real problems which actually impact people. And for me, that's the biggest thing. I want to solve problems, build products which impact people's lives in general. So for me, I think I'll be in healthcare. I'm focused on dentistry right now, but I do see myself in healthcare for a long time, and solving the problems that people are facing.
Okay, so I saw another comment that had come up in the middle. तैयबा कह रही थी कि चलें वो तारीफें कर रही हैं. Thank you तैयबा, that makes us happy. लेकिन अब आप ये बताएं कि will you be interested to work with me in Sydney? So that's a question. I don't know. आपके कोई plans हैं? Is there any way that you can integrate? तैयबा.
So I think right now we're focused on the US. As I mentioned, different markets are very different, and I think it's very important for startups to be focused on what they're doing, not get distracted by other opportunities which might be amazing, and really build out something. And once that's built and you think you've solved the problem, then it's worth looking elsewhere. So I think right now we're focused on the US market, and we will be focused on it for the next few years.
So Tayyiba, quickly मैं अगर answer करूँ ना आपका, तो I would say कि please let's figure out आप करना क्या चाह रही हो, right? It's difficult at this point in time कि what are you trying to do? But at Epiphany we always have roles for people who want to mentor other startups or work with them, work with Epiphany. बहुत सारी चीजें हो सकती हैं, but for that we need to understand कि आप करना क्या चाह रही हैं, in life, what are you trying to do, आपका क्या skill set है, ठीक है? अच्छा, Sohail का एक question आया हुआ है, are you outsourcing any work to Pakistan? Do you and this is probably this is going to be the last question, ठीक है? Because हमने 1 hour का request किया था, and she's out there, Wardah is out there building great things, right? Making Pakistan prouder. So the last question that I'm going to ask you is, are you outsourcing? कल कोई आप काम पाकिस्तान में outsource कर रही हो, इधर से कराती हैं, और आप क्या suggest करती हैं from your own experience कि क्या skilled लोगों को पाकिस्तान में अपने खुद ventures के ऊपर energy लगानी चाहिए, या क्या उनको focus करना चाहिए to work with other people?
So I think for the first question, so we have some engineers in Pakistan working as well, and the second question of I think so. If I was in Pakistan at this time, I would definitely be doing something. There's so much opportunity there. There's so many things broken that we can actually fix. You have so much advantage there, especially when it comes to living at your family's place. Having engineers who are really, really good. Hamare software engineers are as good as anywhere in the world. Being able to build something very low cost. at a very low cost. I think there's a lot of advantage building your own company in Pakistan compared to what you might get as a job there. So I think yahan, I would say even less so than what is available in Pakistan. Here, we had to leave our, we had options to join Google, Apple, etc. And those are options. In Pakistan, your other option might not even be that exciting. And if you can actually build something, whether it's monetary wise or it's the impact or just having autonomy and really growing, I think it's a great opportunity, especially in Pakistan, to be building your own company.
बिल्कुल आपने जो है ना वो ट्रू एंटरप्रेन्योर की तरह ये क्वेश्चन आंसर किया है राइट कि जो भी इतने सारे चैलेंजेस हैं इतनी सारी प्रॉब्लम्स हैं पाकिस्तान के अंदर कोई भी प्रॉब्लम हम अगर ले लें any one problem that we care about, we're passionate about, we can literally, craft a solution around that problem for people actually जो कि उससे affect होते हैं, जो कि, मतलब कोई भी चीज़ है, आप कुछ भी उठा लो, I think, the grass is green in Pakistan for sure. But thank you so much, Wardah. आपका बहुत अच्छा सेशन था. Thank you very, very much. आप इधर आई हो, आपने पूरी अपने experiences बहुत ही candidly share किए हैं. And wherever, you could help us, I think, and other startups, I think this has been really, really useful. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Samar. Thank you for having me as well.
Yeah, and for everybody who liked listening to Wardah, so next week, 2 weeks from now, right, 23rd of June को inshallah, we are doing another session with Wardah, PWIC के साथ मिलके, जिसमें हम health tech को थोड़ा और explore करेंगे, in Pakistan and abroad as well, कि क्या opportunities हैं. So thank you, Wardah, once again.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Okay, so with that, I'm sorry, मैं कभी-कभी ये जो है ना, this technology is new. I'm sorry, I just crossed Wardah out of the live stream too quickly. Very quickly, I just wanted to highlight कि आज एक और भी हमारा session है अभी at 8 o'clock. So तकरीबन 2 घंटों के अंदर हम दोबारा से वापस आएंगे. This is about the gaming landscape in Pakistan. This time with a lot of gaming gurus, जो veterans हैं gaming industry के, उनके साथ हम conversation करेंगे. और so 8 बजे inshallah we're going to do that. Asad, are you going to play the video? I think there's a video that my team has been developing. Okay, all right. All right, okay then. Khuda Hafiz, see you in 2 hours.